As we all know, in the modern world, the subjects of sex and gender aren't as clear-cut as they used to be. Not least because they used to mean the same thing. And when we throw gender ideology into the mix, it all gets rather confusing, or at least it gets confusing for the people with poor personal hygiene and brightly coloured hair, who spend every waking moment either shouting bigot at anyone who doesn't 100% agree with their own ideology, or screaming and claiming to be the victim. But luckily, today I have 3 clips I've taken from Twitter which will set the record straight. And when I say straight, that isn't a slur against anyone who isn't heterosexual. It's 2023 and I've got to be fucking careful. The first clip comes from a doctor. Yes, a doctor, so this guy will know what he's on about. His name's Dr. Joe Court. I've been on his website and he's something of a self-proclaimed relationship expert. Although 25 years ago, we wouldn't have called him a relationship expert. We would have called him probably a pervert. And I say that because Joe is a gay man, and of course there's nothing wrong with being gay. No one picks their sexuality. But one of his main interests appears to be finding out how many men in heterosexual marriages would be willing to go away with him and experiment. And of course there's nothing wrong with experimenting with your sexuality. It's just, when I go to the doctor, I'm not expecting him to ask if I fancy a bit of light sodomy. Nonetheless, we know as a doctor he'll be an expert, so here is his opinion.
Some straight men are attracted to trans women who haven't had bottom surgery. This is very disconcerting and confusing to women when they find this out, because they think, well, if she hasn't had bottom surgery, then, and you want to play with that part of her, then you can't be 100% straight. But that doesn't make sense, because you have to remember that these are still women. Trans women are women. They are female. The attraction to her is from the waist up, but it can also be from the waist down. And they can experience pleasure playing with that person from the waist down. But that act, again, doesn't indicate a sexual orientation. It indicates an attraction to the person, to the woman, the trans woman. Actually, some of these men are attracted to gender fluidity, in that the person exhibits both male and female body parts. And that's attractive to them. Just like some gay men are attracted to trans men who haven't had bottom surgery. That doesn't make them bi, it doesn't make them straight.
First up, how condescending is Joe being, in particular towards women? But of course, that's a big part of trans ideology, belittling and attacking women at every given opportunity, saying they have trouble understanding. In effect, Joe is going, "Hi birds, you're too thick to understand what I'm thinking. Your brains aren't equipped for it. All you understand are kittens and tampons. My God, you'll be wanting the right to vote next, or if you live in the USA, in certain states, the right to govern your own bodies." So if it's women who find that confusing, well, again, it's still 2023. I must be a woman because I'm as confused as fuck. And of course now I can say I'm a woman, and anyone who disagrees with me must be a transphobe. The doctor used the term 100% straight, and for me, I don't think sexuality is that simple. It's not like here is straight, here is gay, and bi is bang in the middle. It's a spectrum, and we're all somewhere on that spectrum. Now, I know a lot of straight men don't like hearing that, but these are often the same straight men who at the weekend watch football and action films and don't get there are homoerotic undertones in both of them. Nonetheless, if you are a straight man and you're in a relationship, be it romantic and or sexual, with another person who has a penis, even if you're only attracted to her from the waist up, I would question whether or not you are 100% straight. Because let's say you're attracted to trans women, you go out on a date and at some point you've got her cock down the back of your throat. You need to question your sexuality. And the argument that straight men can be attracted to trans women because trans women are real women. Is it just me that's fucking sick of hearing that? No, they aren't, but the doctor even uses the term female. Anyone born male cannot become female. It is impossible. Interestingly though, all of us were female at some point, when we were embryos. And here's a disturbing fact for any men watching. That line that runs up the middle of your ballsack, that's where your vagina used to be. Nonetheless, if you are a straight man and you find yourself being rogered up the garden path by a confused man in a dress, that person with a penis is not really a woman. And there's nothing wrong if you're gay, you're bi, if you're into trans women, but don't pretend the trans woman is actually female. Even more confusing are the trans women who think that they're lesbians, and that if they have bottom surgery, other lesbians will then find them attractive.
I affirmed my gender because I needed to do so, because I had gender dysphoria, and I needed to take measures to work to fix that. It had nothing to do with the fact that I'm attracted to women. And even when I had a full masculine male body, even when I was presenting as a man, even when I had a penis, I was still a lesbian.
So gender dysphoria is a horrible mental illness. But crucially, over 90% of people diagnosed with dysphoria grow out of it. In fact, most men with gender dysphoria just turn out to be gay. But if you're a heterosexual man, cutting your dick off does not then make you a lesbian. It makes you a heterosexual man who cut his dick off. And as for bottom surgery, now sadly, I've seen pictures of some of these artificial vaginas. And they either look like roadkill or a lasagna that's been hit with a shovel. Yet the point which both the Doctor and Frankenstein's monster appear to be missing is how many people are actually attracted to trans women? Clearly there must be some, because the porn sites are getting flooded with the freaky shit. But I don't know anyone who openly says they are attracted to trans women. I suspect those who are just lunatics masquerading as sexual deviants. I've said this before, I have never been in a homosexual relationship, but if I had a gun to my head and I had to choose whether to have sex with a gay man or a trans woman, regardless of whether she'd had bottom surgery or not, I'd have to pick the gay man. Because at least I'd know what he was, and crucially, so would he. Rather than some delusional type in a wig who thinks that a person born with a penis can somehow still be a woman. Of course, we can't talk about gender ideology without the subject of changing the language. Because a huge part of being a trans rights activist is changing language in a way which dehumanises and denigrates women. Because, let's be clear, the toxic elements of the trans movement are the ultimate misogynists. These are people who not only want to invade women's sports and their safe spaces and their changing rooms and even their fucking prisons. They want to put themselves in a position of power where they can dominate women whilst removing their rights yet still claiming to be the victim. In this last clip we have another confused individual who wants to drop the descriptions, to dump the adjectives. So rather than having blonde women, brown women, black women and even trans women, it's just women. And on the face of it, that sounds rather nice and inclusive, but I suspect it has a more sinister undertone. Often trans rights activists will use the term cis to describe biological women, or real women. Cis women and trans women. The point being, they're both meant to be women. So if we can drop the adjectives, then all women get lumped into the same category, and thus trans women can infiltrate into the female world.
Look, I just don't understand why we can't have women and black women. I don't get why we can't just have women and autistic women. I don't get why we can't have women and blonde-haired women. All of those things are adjectives. And what happens when you remove the adjective? You're just left with the noun. So, when you remove the black from black women, you are left with women. When you remove the blonde from blonde women, you are left with women. And when you remove the trans from trans women, guess what you're left with?
Men. Men is what you get when you drop trans women. You are left with men. Often men who want to dress as women and live their lives as best they can. But let's be clear, there will also be some dangerous sexual predators who will use loopholes to gain access to female-only spaces. But does that even matter now? Because if you're a trans woman, according to a doctor, all us straight guys want to fuck you anyway. As ever, thanks for watching.